Hey, good morning, and welcome to Forging the Falcons. This is our regularly scheduled Wednesday morning time at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Nick Kendall should be joining me here shortly. Wanted to get started, say good morning to everybody. We went yesterday with a gut reaction on after a Monday night game. We will be regularly at 8:45 on Mondays after the Sunday games, but we did a game after we did a pod after the Monday night game. Don't think we'll see too many of those this year, but it was a fun game for sure to try and cover, and we'll get into a little bit of that. And we're going to hit on a few topics this morning. We're going to talk about a Bleacher Report article that has the rank the quarterbacks, and I was a little surprised to see where Marcus Mariota was ranked. We're going to talk about some of the roster cuts, what that means for the players that are still on the roster, and we'll talk about some of the roster battles that go down that will still be happening over the course of the next week as the big cuts happen when the teams go from 80 to 53 in the next 6 days. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome in my co-host, Nick Kendall, who is up bright and early in Seattle. Again, I am Scott Kennedy in Atlanta, and this is Nick Kendall, and he is in Seattle. So we've got your Falcons covered from coast to coast. And good morning, Nick. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. I'm catching up on some sleep and starting to get excited for the next big adventure. Starting Thursday, I'm going with about 30 miles, 7,000 feet elevation gain on the north part of the Wonderland Trail. So
Now, when
it's
you do
nonstop.
that, how much of that do you do in one day?
Um, my group that I'm going with on this one, some of them are not as gung ho as I
Mhm.
am about the mileage and the distance. So we're going about 9 miles a day. We're
Okay.
doing it 3 days and 3 nights, but I'm doing a few side ventures while they're doing it. I'll probably
Right.
wake up at about 3:30 a.m. on Friday to go to Fire Lookout and watch the sunrise, which as well. So a little bit crazy, but I'm used to being up early and just going for it. So it's excited for it.
Well, that'll be a lot of fun for sure. I know Victor's in here. So want to say good morning to Victor. Good morning, Victor. For some reason, the stream didn't show up on YouTube quite the way it normally does. So hopefully,
Hmm.
people are still finding their way in on YouTube. I shared it out on Twitter. All the more reason to be following us on Twitter to make sure you don't miss out on anything. Joe coming in, always with us in the mornings. Good morning, Joe. And he says, good morning, Scott, and good morning, Nick. And Ray Falcon, one of the OGs. Ray's been with us. We've been doing this a little over a year now, and Ray's been with us since the very beginning. So welcome in, Ray. Glad to have you. Would love to get some of your comments, guys, on and ladies that come in on the game that come in. If you missed yesterday and you want to have any questions or anything like that, and Ray does. Ray's coming in hot this morning, so we'll hit on those topics as well as the ones that I just mentioned as well. Jeremy Sean coming in says, good morning, fellas. Just got the notification. Okay, good. Glad those are starting to go out. Again, going, following on Twitter, making sure you get that, and then just kind of get used to the schedule. Schedule, hopefully, is, I know there's a lot of shows that Nick and I do, but this one is going to be every Wednesday, 9 a.m., every Monday, 8:45 a.m. Eastern. And Ray's coming in hot a little bit. It says, am I wrong that I'm pissed the way the game was coached in the second half? Can someone please tell me why we put Felipe Franks in? I mentioned yesterday, Ray, that when I was at the Senior Bowl and I watched Felipe Franks in college, and I was at the time I said I don't think Felipe Franks should be drafted as a quarterback, and I didn't say as a quarterback. I said drafted because it was just assumed that he'd play quarterback, and he wasn't drafted. I'm like, okay, good. There's still some GMs out there with half a brain, and the more I see him play quarterback, the more I'm convinced he should be playing tight end and special teams. So, why do you put Felipe Franks in there? He's in there as an emergency quarterback, Ray. He's there so you don't have to have a third quarterback, basically. You've
Hmm.
got your starter, you've got your backup. Both of those look really good. You shouldn't ever see your third string quarterback over the course of the season. It rarely happens across all 32 teams. Why was he even in then? Good question. Just to get some emergency reps, I
Hmm.
guess. So he's ready in case break glass in case of emergency. Nick, everybody's playing three. He just happens to be the third guy, and maybe they're going to have some packages in there where he comes in and gives you a spread wildcat option type of look, possibly, and you just want to get him comfortable under center. It's not
Yeah, no,
typically fair to the rest of the team, though, is it?
I mean, is it fair to the rest of the team for most of these third string quarterbacks, right? Like we've seen like the Hall of Fame game or stuff like that, where it's these third and fourth strings quarterbacks, and the level of play drops tremendously. It's why teams are chasing elite quarterbacks all the time. It makes just such a big difference. I think probably the biggest thing that that I agree with Ray on this one is that Desmond Ridder probably needs as many reps as he can. Trying to get him seasoned and up to date. And when you're playing a guy like Felipe Franks, there's less reps there for Ridder.
Mhm.
I guess the one thing is, though, Ridder has been playing well. You don't want
Mhm.
to maybe overexpose him, or his confidence is high. Why put him back out there for a series? I know a lot of teams talk about, we went 3 and out. We didn't want to leave our first team out there with a bad taste in their mouth. And I feel like Ridder so far, every single start he's had has not been really a bad taste in his mouth. So they
Yeah.
yank him at a time that makes sense for a guy in a game. It doesn't matter.
Well, and they've also talked. Here's the thing: is Arthur Smith has talked about he wants to see Ridder face adversity.
Hmm.
And you face adversity every day as a rookie. Let's
Yeah.
be real about that. And maybe it it contradicts a little bit of the thought process of we want to make sure he leaves on a high. So, I kind of agree with Victor and Ray coming in saying, I may have liked to have seen Desmond Ridder play maybe the whole time, and maybe he plays. I bet he gets at least a half this week. How much do we see? I would put the starters in again. The Falcons need Marcus Mariota playing and being sharp and getting comfortable with the receivers, getting comfortable with the offensive line, getting comfortable out there. He hasn't played a ton of football over the last couple of years. So I won't be surprised to see him play. But when he's not playing, I want Desmond Ridder playing. I don't want Felipe Franks playing. So I agree with Ray and Victor on this one.
Yeah. No, I mean, also you're coming from, his name is blanking me right now. The general manager coming from New Orleans. Maybe they want that
Terry
Taysom.
Fontenot.
Terry Fontenot, yes. Maybe they want that Taysom Hill kind of guy. Emergency quarterback, gives you different options, special teams, tight end, and maybe also Felipe Franks. Maybe is a big benefit to the locker room as well. The quarterback meetings and whatnot. So hard to say unless you know the dynamics in there. But again, it's your third string quarterback. Most teams get upset. Most fans get upset in Broncos country. We're having pretty, not heated, but, discussions about how terrible the second and third string quarterback are. Typically when you get beyond the first string, it's not good in the NFL. So I guess be happy you have 2 that are good, and you can get excited about a lot more of your preseason reps.
And don't get me wrong, I like having Felipe Franks on the roster.
Yeah.
He offers something beyond just being a roster spot holder as your third quarterback. Sometimes you can stash that guy on the practice squad, but Felipe Franks can contribute in multiple ways. And if he can, great. I think I like having him on the roster. Again, emergency third string quarterback. You don't want to see him in there unless, like you said, there's some Taysom Hill in there, because Felipe Franks, his college resume as a passer is every bit as good as Taysom Hill was. So, it's just he never had the accuracy. He didn't have the resume or the team around him, and it wasn't as good a player as Tim Tebow. But Tebow was a very similar way. He put up good numbers in college, but you could just tell by the release and the arm and everything that he just was not an NFL type quarterback. Just the throwing just was, at the end of the day, you still got to be able to make the throws consistently. And I just never saw that with Felipe Franks. But again, I thought Tim Tebow should have gone and been the next Dallas Clark as a tight end, H-back type. So I like that you've got him free. He was an undrafted free agent, and he can do multiple things. Because I saw out there busting his butt on special teams. I don't think it was on kick. I'm pretty sure it was on punt return. I'm like, yeah, go get it, kid. Love it. Love to see it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And a lot of third string quarterback talk, but I don't think it's the worst situation seeing him play. And the biggest thing is that I think Mariota and Ridder have looked pretty good so far. I know it's preseason action. It's the first team against a lot of second string guys, blah, blah, blah. But there should be some hope there, considering some people are not as big on the Falcons quarterbacks.
And there is a lot of third string quarterback talk, because frankly, there's been a lot of quarterback talk there were people. There was a large contingent of Falcons fans that were so tired of Matt Ryan that it was basically anybody but Matt Ryan. Okay, Felipe Franks doesn't come in. He's 6'7". He runs a 4.5. Yes. No. I don't want him playing quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons. I didn't want him drafted. I thought someone might take a reach on him, and he ended up getting third or fourth round. But I was, as an undrafted free agent guy to come in and do some things. Yeah, very good. And coming in and doing some things for us is Mark Schrader. Welcome in, Mark. Glad to see you. Appreciate you being here. And Kevin Mapp also coming in on Facebook. So make sure you're hitting that like and share buttons on YouTube and Facebook. It really helps us out. We start slow and it starts building and building and building because you help us out. And we end up finishing with our biggest part of our audience. So it does, our audience increases as it goes on because y'all come in and hit that like and share button. I'm going to do that right now. Hit that like and share button on the Facebook and YouTube stuff. And if you happen to be on Twitter, hit that retweet also. That helps as well. So good morning, Kevin. Ray coming in and he says, I think Ritter is better than Marcus. This kind of leads us into the discussion here. I'm going to drop this. I usually do. I'm going to drop this article, share it. If we're going to talk about it, we might as well send them a link. Bleacher Report, Ian Horton on Bleacher, did his quarterback power rankings, and he came in and he said that number 32 was Marcus Mariota. That surprised me a little bit, Nick. I'm not expecting a world beater. I'm not thinking top 10, top 15, but 32. Let me see here. Let me see some of the things he said. He's free agent, played for Arthur Smith, yada, yada, yada. He never reached the heights he did in 2016 and has gotten worse every year since. His athleticism may help design a disastrous offensive line, but there's not much reason for optimism. He's in a situation where he needs to produce a career-best season to avoid being benched for rookie Desmond Ritter. I can see that part. Yeah, I mean, I think he needs to play at a solid level. If he's playing like the worst quarterback in the NFL, we're going to see Desmond Ritter sooner than later.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It does seem harsh, but Mariota hasn't played in a while, and once you start going through some of the names, it does kind of add up. But like, how can you put a guy like Justin Fields right now ahead of Marcus Mariota, a guy like Zach Wilson ahead of Mariota? I mean, Baker Mayfield has not been very good. Also, maybe why should he be ahead of him? So this is one reason that I don't really like the ordinal lists. And for you non-science folks at homes, ordinal means it's like a category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Right.
I prefer buckets, tiers, tier the quarterbacks, because then if you want to argue within the tiers, that's fine. But I think it's a much better way to discuss the players. So 32 out of 32, pretty damn harsh.
Mark Schrader comes in with the stars for us, kicking us off on stars. Yes, you can contribute both stars on either of the Facebook pages you're watching on, or Super Chats is a way to kind of say thank you to your Forging the Falcons crew here. Again, so obviously not a prerequisite. We're here regardless. But if you want to say thank you like Mark just did, that is a way to do it. And Nick, going back to your point, I asked myself if you were, and we want to say hi to Dom again real quick. Dom, Jaramillo coming in. Welcome, Dom. Appreciate you being here. My thought on this, Nick, is how I'm judging my quarterbacks is if I need to win a game tomorrow, who would I rather have? Now, if I'm starting a game and my life's on the line and I've got this Falcons team, would I rather have Justin Fields or would I rather have Marcus Mariota? Would I rather have a healthy Zach Wilson or would I rather have Marcus Mariota? Would I rather have, and Mark Schrader and Joe Cannon both use the name Drew Lock? They actually had Geno Smith. So Drew Lock hasn't been able to beat out Geno Smith, and Geno Smith has looked terrible. Would you rather have Geno Smith or would you rather have Marcus Mariota? So far I'm 3 for 3 on Marcus on these games for a single game. I think some of the upside, if I'm drafting a team right now and I'm starting a team, I like the upside better on a Justin Fields. I'm still not sold on Zach Wilson because what scared me about him is when he actually had time was when he looked the worst. That's a scary proposition. So I know it's preseason, but Nick, he hadn't looked like the worst starting quarterback in the NFL.
No, he hasn't. And when he played with the Raiders as well, spot started, he looked pretty darn good. And I think him not getting play with the Raiders says much more about Derek Carr, who's a
Derek Carr's a
borderline
good quarterback.
very good. And that hurts me to say. But and another quarterback you didn't even list here, Taylor Heineke. I know, good story coming out there playing for the Commanders, but I'd take Marcus Mariota over Taylor Heineke as well. Or they have Carson Wentz now, I
They
guess.
have Carson Wentz in that spot, which is still an argument.
Yeah.
You
exactly.
know, it goes 31 Zach Wilson, 30 Daniel Jones, 29 Geno Smith, 28 Mitch Trubisky, 27 Trey Lance, 26 Jared Goff, 25 Justin Fields, 24 Davis Mills, 23 Ryan Tannehill. I'm waiting to get to Carson Wentz, 22 Carson Wentz. Wasn't just going to scroll through the whole thing, and hopefully that didn't. Sometimes when I scroll while I'm doing this, my microphone gets a little staticky.
No,
so again, that's a great way to put it, because when I did rankings for college football recruiting, these guys, you've got them at 16 and these at 9. I'm like, yeah, but they're points based. I always like to put them on a line graph. And you might see Alabama and Ohio State way up here, small drop off to USC, and then there's basically a flat line between like 8 and 17 where they're all like this close to one another. I'm like, I'm basically telling you, I'm not telling you that they're 9 spots worse. I'm telling you basically there isn't a difference between 8 and 17. That's what the numbers are telling you. Forget that it's 9 spots less. So ordinal is a how you put that is a much smarter way to put it than I did. I'm like, I'd just graph it and show people.
Yeah. And the chat as well talking now to Tagovailoa. What has he proven yet? He was pretty poor last year. Teddy Bridgewater, if you're going to throw him out there as well, I'd rather have Marcus Mariota. So I don't know. I get it that Marcus Mariota, when he left the Titans, when he was benched, that kind of left a poor taste in a lot of people's mouth, because then Tannehill came in and looked pretty good for them. But Mariota, he's probably one of the worst 5 to 10 starting quarterbacks in football. But you knew that going in. What are you paying him? Look what his contract is.
I mean, he's making some decent money.
Well, compared to starting quarterbacks, the length, the guaranteed. I mean,
yeah, it's basically a 1-year, $12 million deal.
And most quarterbacks are making 20 plus. The ones that have reached their second contract.
And Mariota, he wasn't bad.
No,
it's just the record of the team was 2-4. But in 6 games, he was 7 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. With a 92.3 quarterback rating. You know who that was better than? Since we've got some Denver Broncos fans in here, and we like to reminisce about the 4-1 from Drew Lock. Those numbers are better than what Drew Lock had in his 4-1.
Yeah.
So his numbers weren't bad. Again, there's more than just numbers. But when he went out, the team took off under Ryan Tannehill, and they've stayed that way. And now Ryan Tannehill has kind of reverted back to form, which is where he was in Miami, which was a guy that Miami didn't want.
Yep.
Welcome in, Jason. Jason says, I don't hate that list, but they overrated Tua. I agree. Tua was starting to play pretty well. Baker Mayfield at 21. The one for me that might be is a little bit of a head scratcher is Jameis Winston all the way up at 19. To think, again, you're talking tiers. I'm like, how close is Jameis Winston to the bottom, to being, because, a good Jameis Winston is pretty good, but a bad Jameis Winston is freaking awful. And he's coming off of a season-ending injury, and and Sean Payton's not there anymore. We'll see what Michael Thomas does with the Saints, and we'll get a really good look at Jameis, in 2 weeks when they hook up against the Falcons in week 1 of the season. The problem with that is Jameis Winston has better numbers. I actually did an article on it. He has better numbers against the Falcons than Patrick Mahomes' career rating, Aaron Rodgers' career rating, and Tom Brady's career rating. So saying that he turns into Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady when he plays the Falcons is legit. He roasts the Falcons. So he could prove to be a top 5 guy after week 1, and everybody's scrambling to get him in their fantasy leagues.
Yeah, and he was pretty hot week 1 last year. I think what did he have, like a 5-touchdown game, a 6-touchdown game against the Packers week 1. So Jameis Winston's talented. It's never been the talent for him. So we have Ray Falcon coming in saying, to be honest, our defense looks eons better than last year. Yeah, no doubt. The defense looks looks to have a lot more depth, and I think that's a testament to the bolstering of draft picks this team had. But also, I think the biggest thing, we haven't really seen it so much yet in the secondary, but I think the defensive front specifically looks a lot more talented. Graham looks like a different player year 2, which has been huge for the unit. And you aren't playing, Jags, to put it that way, at the edge position. Even if
Steven Means wasn't even a Jag. Average would have been great. Typically you mean a replaceable, just a guy, just another guy.
Yeah.
They weren't even Jags. Jags would have been big step ups. They were, Fowler was a Jag. Dante Fowler was a guy. He was out there. He was a guy. He was okay. Steven Means, God bless him, was impossibly bad. Impossibly. So getting average out of the other edge position will make a big difference.
Yep. 100%. And also Pease, year 2 with the defense. It'll be interesting to see how it goes, but defense does look a lot better. That said, it is preseason football. Are they showing everything coverage-wise, pressure-wise? A lot of times teams can play, basic shells, don't get beat over the top early in preseason. So it's not the live reps yet, so to speak, that really, when you find out about the defense. So we'll figure that out. And overall, though, I think it's going to be better, a better unit. Maybe the linebacking core steps back, but that's probably the least important positional group on the defense. And I say that just because Deion Jones coming off an injury and losing Aluakon to
Foye
Aluakon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the name.
which I do want to talk a little bit about Troy Anderson as well before we get out of here. I thought he looked a good game as we get into this. Real quick, and I'll come back to Ray. Mark coming in, he's got a cup of coffee for Nick too. Appreciate the stars, Mark, as always. Ray, I touched on this a lot yesterday, and I said that there was the second snap of the game was just right off the bat was this is a different defense. I don't know if the play I watched it. I've watched it twice, and just remember I was just watching the players and not their original play to know if it was designed to go left or if that's the way it was forced. Because the second snap, handoff to the left, was it designed to go to the middle? They couldn't. Anthony Rush got a little bit of a push against 2 guys, occupied 2 blockers right there. Taquan Graham took the tackle and knocked him 3 yards into the backfield, forcing the running back to the outside. And who's out there? New signing, Casey Hayward at corner, stealing an edge. Fabian Moreau would have been headed for the pylon in the other direction last year. He was on skates on the outside. It drove me nuts. Run defense is a mindset. It's an attitude, kind of like blocking. We talked a little bit about with Broncos, Albert Okwuegbunam. Either it's a mindset. It's not a skill so much. There's technique involved, but holding that edge and being tough enough to do it. But I saw that play. I'm like, all right, these are the upgrades we were looking for. And Taquan Graham is an internal upgrade that Arthur Smith called it a big leap. That's gushing for Arthur Smith. He doesn't talk about players. He doesn't like talking about players, about individuals. But Taquan Graham has looked fantastic in the preseason. Yeah. And even if he just steps up to average on the DL, that's great. And then I've said from the beginning, Casey Hayward opposite AJ Terrell is just going to be a huge upgrade because Fabian Moreau was freaking awful last year. Him and Means on the edge, you get the edge every time. Every single time that you wanted to run the ball, you're 7 yards out and you're hoping before a safety get out there and make a tackle. So a very just one play helped kind of sum up the run defense for me right there with Anthony Rush in the middle, Taquan Graham helping to control the edge, even though he's a 3-4, he wasn't playing edge, but he still forced the guy outside. Yeah. And then Casey Hayward being strong enough on the full outside to turn it back inside and make a tackle. Thing of beauty, man. Thing of beauty, Ray.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure Pease was happy about that as well. So I think the defense will be better overall. You're talking about Troy Anderson. I didn't highlight him that much, but obviously he's been brought about slowly coming off injury. What were your thoughts of his action so far in preseason and your expectations this year? And first we got Rob saying, good morning, Nick and Scott. Happy hump day. Happy hump day to you as well, Rob. Hope you're doing well.
Absolutely, Rob. Welcome. Good morning. Thanks for coming in over on YouTube. My thoughts on Troy Anderson were, and I've said a zillion times, there's no such thing as unbiased. I'm biased. I really, really like what I've seen out of Troy Anderson. Anything I see from him, I want it to be good. So I try and dial that back, recognize that bias. And I still liked what I saw for the most part. I felt like he was playing chicken with your head cut off is too strong. But you could tell he wanted to make an impact. He wanted to get after it. He wasn't always taking the right angles. He wasn't always in the right spots, but everything he was doing was a step faster than anybody else that was playing out there, which I love to see. And from a scheme point of view, I've seen more guys sent dead up the middle, whether it was Rashaan Evans or Troy Anderson, coming dead up the middle on a blitz than we saw all of last year. So there's a little more athleticism in that spot, in size, that I think we'll see. Well, we're going to see more than 18 sacks by default. Again, that number was crazy low. But I think we're going to see some sacks from the inside linebackers this year, Nick. I think we're going to see some pressure right up the gut from Evans, from Anderson, specifically Troy Anderson coming in, and then maybe Michael Walker, but he's really good in coverage. But I'd keep an eye on Rashaan Evans and Troy Anderson coming straight up the gut. But I was very pleased with what I saw.
Well, you remember what just leading up to the draft as well, talking about Troy Anderson being like, okay, well, sometimes his processing, his flipping his hips can be a little bit wrong, but man, he is a freak athlete. Where does that translate the easiest for the linebacker position? Pin your ears back, baby, and go. Edge, A-gap, go hunt. Don't think, hunt. So using the linebackers, which again, I think in today's NFL, we're seeing a trickle up effect. That's typically what happens in football with scheme and whatnot, but colleges have been using linebackers more and more. Again, I think it was the Broncos under, I can't remember who the coordinator was, but the zone blitz was pretty popular. And you're seeing that a lot with the 4-2-5 or 3-4 look with the linebackers lining up as a mug over an A gap. And are they coming? Are they going? They're trying to put up more guys on the defensive line than they have blockers. So then if you have a free guy or run a stunt or something, you're going to create much more space. It's not just confusion on the back end, it's confusion in the front end. Having an athlete with size.
I was saying the size is there, because Foye
yep.
was a really intelligent middle linebacker, inside linebacker, but him and Dion are 220 at most.
Yeah.
They're listed less than that. Where Troy Anderson's coming in at 245 and runs like the wind. I mean, he's an exciting player. I'm excited to see Albert Knoppers coming in on Facebook. He says, "Hello, guys." Well, good morning, Albert. Appreciate you checking in on Facebook. We've got about 7 likes and shares on Facebook right now, so make sure you hit that and come in a little bit. And speaking of one of the other linebackers who has had different roles with the Falcons, and I like him better as a true outside in a 4-3, usually on a will, like a weak backer. But with Deion Jones, Ray asked, he says, "What's up with Deion? Is he going to play? Are you mad we got rid of Campbell?" Why can I think who Campbell is? So when I've thought about that since, and Ray, I'm blanking on who Campbell is. So apologies, but what's up with Deion? Oh, what is up with Deion? Deion is super expensive, and at times has been considered a detriment in the locker room. That was one of the reasons they kind of wanted to get Devondre Campbell. They got drafted together. Okay, Thank you, Joe. Can't be too mad about it because it's been a while. Young Green, thanks, y'all. It's been a while because he didn't leave an impression.
He was amazing last year.
A real good impression for me. But yes, thanks, guys. I'm not overly mad that Devondre Campbell is bad. He again, we were talking about Jags. To me, he was kind of just a guy. At least with the Falcons.
Yeah.
At least with the Falcons, I know. Didn't he move on to Detroit last year?
No, he went to the Packers and was like first team All-Pro. He was incredible in Green Bay last year.
Okay. Well, I forgot about him with the Falcons and didn't watch the Packers. So thank you. Then yeah, I probably should be mad that we got rid of Devondre Campbell and weren't using him quite right.
Yeah.
Be mad at the defense again. Be mad at the defensive scheme and why wasn't he taking advantage of when you lose guys and they don't do anything, you're like, okay, that was the right move. When you lose guys and they flourish, you're like, all right, we screwed up. So thanks, gentlemen. Is Deion gonna play? I don't know. Arthur Smith is saying the right things right now. He's working to get closer. I don't get the same vibe I did with Calvin Ridley last year. the first press conference I heard when he was eligible, the week before he was eligible to come off of they put him on a short-term IR. When he was eligible to come back, I'm like, hey, he ain't coming back. Listen to the way Arthur Smith is talking. There's no way. I don't get that same vibe yet. I'm pretty sure they'd like to move him on in his giant salary, but it still doesn't make sense financially to move him on this year. I don't see any way he's an Atlanta Falcon in 2023.
Yeah, it would be shocking if he was, but we'll see. And man, I've totally forgot about Calvin Ridley. Man, it's not to get on a pedestal here real quick, but what's going on with the Browns and Deshaun Watson, and then you have Calvin Ridley suspended for a year. What a bleeping disgrace. Unbelievable.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going around where, again, I don't necessarily have a problem with Calvin Ridley's suspension. I don't want to play the whataboutism type of thing. I mean, basically, if you bet on NFL football, you're risking your career, flat out. So the fact that somebody else did something different to me is a little irrelevant. I get it. I understand. But basically, I'm not saying that Calvin really didn't deserve a year for betting on football. You kind of know that. Again, whether you agree with it or not, kind of like smoking dope. It's who'd he hurt? Nobody. But the rules. The Deshaun Watson thing we could do, and people have done multiple shows on what should have or should happen with him. And again, I've kind of stayed out of that a little bit because I don't know all the facts. I know it looks horrible, but I've stayed out of that one just a little bit. I really have. That's a little too sensitive for me. If he was coming to Atlanta, frankly, I'm glad the Falcons stepped on their Johnsons and didn't get him.
Yeah.
Because Matt Ryan should be in Indianapolis this year, and that dead cap number should be eaten this year. It accelerates the rebuild, and you're going to have a ton of money in draft capital and all kinds of options next year.
Yep. Much more fun for the team builders like ourselves, where you have a lot of options. Obviously, in the end, you need to get that quarterback, but avenues to get there, and excited to see. Maybe you already got that guy. Desmond Ritter's looked good so far. Excited to see him. We can have a lot of fun team building wise if you are on that rookie contract with a guy like with Desmond Ritter. And yeah, betting is an integrity of the game issue. It is. And I know
it is, but you're also, and sorry to interrupt, Nick, but it's also becoming more and more integrated with the game. They have, if you go over to Europe and go to a match, it's like a horse racing. They've got the bookies, the betting places in the stadiums. You've got betting sponsors across the kits. I've got DraftKings. I've got all kinds of gambling things all over everywhere. I've got a team in Las Vegas. So it's the do what I say, not what I do type of thing. And if there's one thing that bothers me more, there's a lot of things that bother me, but the one that comes to the top of the list all the time for me is hypocrisy. Just drives me freaking batty. I've said a zillion times, I don't mind an asshole. I can't stand a hypocrite. And hypocrisy bothers me. And the way, okay, we can have a lottery, as long as the government's running it, but no gambling. Well, that's hypocrisy. Yeah. The way that the gambling is being integrated into professional sports, yet you don't do it, is, again, not on your own team, not on your own league. You can go bet somewhere else. You can go bet college football or something.
Yeah. Today's breaking news. Calvin Ridley suspended for gambling. This was brought to you by DraftKings, #1 provider by the NFL. It's like, cool. Awesome.
Yeah. So no, I get it, Kevin, for sure. I mean, it is usually, I mentioned, when you start wondering about the integrity of the game, it takes the fun out of sport. It does, with refereeing decisions, deciding a game, that type of thing, that takes the fun out of the competition. So I agree when sure. It said that over 80% of the owners in the 80s had ties to the mob. Well, now they're tied to the biggest mob in the world, which is the United States federal government. So Anyway, enough on that. But what did you think when you saw, did you going back to Troy Anderson a little bit and this improving defense? What did you see when he was out there? Because he was out there a good bit in the second half.
I thought they were flying around, looking pretty well. He's obviously a real good athlete. I thought sometimes he's a little bit, the height, like patting his feet a little bit and then going, rather than flowing the general direction and reading it. So obviously some thinking going on out there, making him a little bit slower. But again, it's early on, and I also liked that the defensive line, for the most part, it seemed to keep him clean. That was another concern with him. While he was a great athlete, he kind of wanted to knife through rather than, taking on shedding blocks, which he's going to have to do in the NFL with the way defensive lines are right now. So I thought he looked pretty good overall. He's going to make some mistakes early on. I have no doubt about that, especially with a good quarterback. I think they're going to, try to play action or isolate him in coverage, make him make a mistake. But I think you accept the lumps early because of the potential that he has and the playmaking ability he has to chase down plays sideline to sideline.
So how much have you looked at at this roster and some of the potential cuts? Where do you feel like some of the key battles are to make this team?
Make the team?
Yeah, to make this team. Where do you think some of the key battles, or just some of the key battles in general, that are still going on? I don't think there is a battle at the quarterback position right now. It's Marcus Mariota's to lose. As long as he's playing well, he's going to keep it. I feel like right tackle is pretty much sewn up, which warms my heart, honestly. As much hell as we've given Caleb McGarry for his play the last 2 years, he's looked fantastic in the first 2 preseason games. Good for him. The bias in me responds with, well, why is it taking this long? Now I'm mad. the I'm mad at him thing. But remove all of that and judge him for what he's doing right now. I'm very, very pleased with where Caleb McGarry is.
Yeah,
lots of battles going on with receivers.
Yes, I was receiver for sure. I feel like the first 3 are pretty well set from what I've seen. Obviously, Drake London, number 1, Zacchaeus out there as well as the slot, and then Brian Edwards. Hodges looked solid. Bird stands out there, but I think those first 3 are pretty head and shoulders above, and the reps kind of indicate that as well from what I've seen. The one that this is a backup position battle, but one that still intrigues me is running back 2. I'm not sure how that's going to play out. Obviously, I was a big Tyler Algier guy coming into that, and I thought he's averaging 5 yards a carry out there, and I think his blocking has been pretty good as well. Looked pretty natural as a receiver, even though BYU didn't really use him that way. They have Damian Williams, they have Quadre Olison, been using those guys effectively as well, but really curious to see about that backup running back, especially because Cordell Patterson is not I don't think he's a bell cow. It just doesn't seem
which
to be
I kind of think, Nick, I kind of don't put him in the running back bucket, honestly.
Yeah.
I kind of think of him as like X factor. This is weapon. So who's going to be? You can still have your 2 running backs, Algier and Damian Williams. But then there's Avery Williams, who has a spot on the team for special teams. And then you can try and get some packages. How much will he play on offense? Probably not a ton. I felt like they tried to get him. He's too new to the position to try and to be used too often. But as a returner, I think he's still pretty safe. Lou coming in over on Facebook. Appreciate you joining us, Lou. He says Gino is worse. Yeah, seriously, if you're starting tomorrow, do you want Marcus Mariota, going back to the beginning of the quarterbacks, is Marcus Mariota 32? Well, he can't be 32 because I'd rather have him over either of the starters in Seattle. I might be biased on that. This is a Falcon show. That doesn't mean I'm wrong. I'd rather have Marcus Mariota than Geno Smith or Drew Lock. That doesn't seem like a outlandish statement to me. There's talk about they're going with Geno Smith and Drew Lock because they want the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah.
I don't. And there's legitimate optimism around Marcus Mariota's play in Atlanta. So that one's tough. So Joe says Huntley is the odd man out, and Allison could be the odd man out too. You're not going to keep. Those are the 2 guys. Quadre Ollison's done some good things. But if you start talking, Cordell Patterson needs a spot, Avery Williams needs a spot, Tyler Algier needs a spot, there's 3. You've got an X factor and a return man, so there might be room for the 4th and Damian Williams for sure. But after that, Caleb Huntley and Kadri Allison, I think they're guys that could end up either yo-yoing in and out of the practice squad or whatnot. But I don't see. And Dana Miller comes in and says Allison deserves a real shot. Again, it depends on how they feel about Damian Williams. And I don't know that we've gotten a real good look at Damian Williams in the preseason. Is that because he's got a spot sewn up, or is it because he's on the bubble?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think Allison's looked pretty good, but Tyler Allgeier's the one. If anybody, I know he's higher on the depth chart, but maybe Damian Williams, especially because he's a veteran running back. Those guys tend to not last very long on rosters, or you can find equivalents out there. I know that the Falcons have to have their former Chicago Bear pipeline in there right now, but that's an interesting one. The other position battle that interests me right now is one of the edge rusher spots. Obviously, Lorenzo Carter is starting on one side, but Ogundeji versus Ebiketie intrigues me a lot. It seems like Ogundeji right now is more of the base package guy, with Ebiketie coming in as the more pass rush specialist, but Ebiketie is just a more talented player from what I've gathered and seen. So curious to see how that one plays out as well.
I'm looking at just taking a look at Damian Williams, going back to that one. He got a $500,000 signing bonus with a 1.1. So his dead cap would be $500,000. He's 30 years old, 1 year. And it's not like, Mike Davis had a better resume coming in than Damian Williams did. He's never broken 500 yards rushing.
Yeah.
He's got 1,400 yards career. He had 164. So it's not like we're bringing in like some of the guys we've seen the last couple of seasons. Why can't I remember? Todd Gurley, Stephen Davis. Not Stephen Davis. Who was the big guy that came in? He was also a Ram, the big running back, played for a year and was kind of washed.
Turner. No.
Michael Turner. Steven
Jackson.
That's who he came in and he was washed. Gurley was washed. But those guys had legit resumes. Damian Williams, for a $500,000 dead cap hit to save $1 million, he's legitimately on the bubble. So Dana, when you're saying Allison deserves a shot, that could be it. I don't think Damian Williams is necessarily safe on this team coming in. You hate to flush $500,000 down the drain, but flushing $65 million down the drain. What's another $500,000 on here? So, when you're talking about what we've seen, we've seen Allison look better than Damian Williams in the preseason. Like I said, Damian Williams isn't coming in with a huge resume to begin with. It's decent money at 1.6 with a $500,000 signing bonus, but that's not enough to make you safe. $500,000 dead cap hit is not enough to make you safe on this team.
Yeah, no, nor should it be. And it's a 1-year contract, a 30-year-old free agent running back. I mean, and S means thanks Gurley.
Stephen Means thinks Todd Gurley underperformed. Yeah,
I got it. Yeah. That's
Todd Gurley didn't play again anymore, did he? He didn't. Nope. He didn't play after. He was. It's a tough position, man. It is a tough position, for sure.
Yeah.
And Saring, sorry if I mispronounce your name. It says, will you be okay to re-sign Mariota for $30+ million if you got 4,500 yards, 30 touchdowns, 10 touchdowns, 30 to 10 on TDs, or let him play last year out next year? If he has that number, then you talk about an extension, because again, he is basically on a 1-year deal. He's on a 1-year, basically $12 million deal. Let me look him up real quick. But his numbers mean he can be cut next year with about a $2 million dead cap hit, which is, basically nothing today. His dead cap number next year is 2.5. His cap hit would be 14. If I get 30 plus, if I get 4,500 yards and 30 touchdowns out of him, plus what we know he can do running the ball, I offer him an extension. I extend him without a doubt. And then I'm probably letting Ritter play the whole of the preseason and shopping him. Well, we would already be past the draft, though, wouldn't we? So I would be shopping Ritter for a second-round pick a second rounder, even a late first, if he keeps throwing the way he does, there's going to be some people saying, man, I'd rather have him than we used 4 picks on Trey Lance and this guy was in the third. We need this guy. I would be shopping Ritter if Marcus Mariota has that kind of season. 4,500 yards in this offense is a boatload. 30 touchdowns is possible. And then keep that to a 3-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. And Marcus Mariota should be comeback player of the year and a possible Pro Bowler.
Yeah. And you also have the franchise tag in your back pocket as well that, make him. It's a 2-year deal that he has, though, right?
It's a 2-year deal, but you're not franchising Marcus Mariota for the average of the top 5 quarterbacks played.
It depends on the guarantees, though. Like long term, let's say he wants the $30 million a year, but it's an 8-year contract. I'd rather pay him the top 5 for 1 year rather than let me see you do it again and again. I know it's especially with the how much guarantees are in the contract for these quarterback these days. I'm a little bit trepidatious, but that said, with the roster that's built around him, if he puts up these stats, then maybe you are buying in.
We're a long way from him being 32 on this list to being top 5.
Yeah.
So that's a long ways away. And again, I apologize if I mispronounce your name. Saring if the T is silent. But those numbers would be fantastic. He should be comeback player of the year and a Pro Bowler if he puts those numbers. So how many times has Matt Ryan done that in a much more pass friendly offense? Those are the 4,500 is pretty common for him. The man threw for some yardage, without a doubt. So let me see. Matt Ryan, looking at Football Ref, he was at 4,500 basically year in and year out, but he only broke 30 touchdowns 1, 2, 3 times in his career. Was only under 10 interceptions 1, 2, 3 times in his career. I think those were actually all in the same year. The touchdown interception ratio was really good. So, and again, this was a Julio Jones, Roddy White, Calvin Ridley, Tony Gonzalez. The weapons around him were significantly better than what you see right now. So that'd be fantastic, and I would absolutely try and extend him if he comes up with numbers like that.
Yeah,
there's going to be a lot of folks eating crow. Like I said, I don't expect those numbers are a moonshot for me, but I don't see I don't see a bottom 5 quarterback in the NFL on Marcus Mariota. Maybe I'm just reminiscing at how good he was at one point that made him such a high draft pick because he's got the tools. We're not talking Sam Darnold here. Sam Darnold, I've been, talking down since he was at San Clemente High School I think he was at San Clemente. He was down there close to San Diego somewhere. Went and watched him play, and I'm like, no, we put 3 stars next to his name and moved him up, and he beat out a higher ranked guy at USC, and then ends up getting drafted where he did and traded up to get. I'm like, man, I don't see it.
Yeah, probably don't see it. I get the argument for Mariota being that low. I think is a lot. Like if you were arguing not 2022, but the quarterback situation on the whole, you do get, I think, a little bit bonus points for the young quarterback because of the unknown, the direction where with Marcus Mariota's age, if you wanted to rank the quarterback situation, although you have Desmond Ridder here, that you can make the same argument. So I'm talking the room here for long term. So that would bump them up on the same side. But
but the third rounder versus somebody like Trey Lance. I mean, I'm willing to give Trey Lance a little bit of benefit of the doubt because they've got a quarterback. Jimmy Garoppolo is a solid quarterback, a solid NFL starter. And to say we're going in a different direction, the connecting the dots, well, San Francisco thinks these guys are better than Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo I would have ranked here if he was a starter. Ergo, I'll put Trey Lance a little bit farther down because he hasn't proved yet, but I'm not going to put him at the bottom since he hasn't played. So a little bit of that, I get it. And Clee says, I know it's a totally different era, but John Elway never threw for more than 27 TDs in a season. And that's why it makes it so hard to compare eras. There's no quarterback I would rather have in my entire life with the game on the line than Joe Montana. The guy was just winner. And
Yep.
and you knew it. Tom Brady is like that too. So, if anybody wants to say again, I don't argue levels of elite. Someone would say, no, I want Tom Brady. I'm like, fine, you can't go wrong that way. And they didn't put up those numbers because it's a totally different era for sure.
Yeah, no, different era, hard to talk about. It's like in baseball, the dead ball era, then you get into the steroid era. Like, how can you compare the two? Same game, but the rules have changed, the type of players have changed, et cetera, et cetera. We got Richie Rich coming in over on YouTube saying it'll be interesting to see Marcus's accuracy. He's thrown a few throws that many corners will not allow during the regular season. Yep. So
Yeah, when you're going against the ones on defense, it'll be a little different. He's going to get a lot of his stuff on the move and a lot of underneath. So again, Olamide Zaccheaus in the slot could be a nice weapon, taking those Russell Gage yardage. And then we should see Kyle Pitts over the middle more, and we know Drake London's going to be in the slot a lot. So the middle of the field should be a target for Marcus Mariota in here. And Breon Green comes in. He says, it also depends on whether his performance translates into wins. If we win the division or make the playoffs, not sure how we don't re-sign him. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you go out there and you win. Because, again, we talked about his numbers when he was benched for Tannehill's numbers weren't that bad. 7 touchdowns in 6 games against 2 interceptions plus a running yardage. That's not bad. He had a 93 quarterback average. It's not bad. But they were 2-4. So, part of that was the winning that goes around it. And, those numbers that you mentioned were basically that Saring mentioned here. Those sound a lot like 5-11 Houston Texans Deshaun Watson numbers, if I'm not mistaken. Those look very similar, except he may have been like a 35-7 kind of guy that year, was even a little bit better. And they were like 5-11, 4-12 the last time we saw Deshaun Watson. But Marcus is still young enough that if he puts up numbers like that, he's going to make a lot of money. It's a good opportunity for him for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And happy for him because he seems like a great guy as well. Speaking of good guys, Chris Walker, morning, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Matt was great for yardage, but it was tougher to getting 30 touchdowns a year, especially with the line not being a priority and the lack of a running game after Turner got used up and Freeman shining for a season and a half. Yeah, I would argue the offensive line was not a priority. I mean, you have 3 first-round picks on the line right now.
We're talking about 14 years, though.
Oh, yeah, true.
Yeah.
But they did invest in it some. I think as the defense was much more forgotten about compared to the offensive line. But yeah, Matt Ryan, very good. You lost Kyle Shanahan. That kind of made everything kind of fall apart after that. And just not having the bevy of weapons. I mean, you have a very smart quarterback like Matt Ryan. I think it's better to have, 4 really good players rather than Julio Jones with a bunch of miss around him. So, because then you're not really taking advantage of the reads or the mind of Matt Ryan as much when you have like, okay, we're throwing at the Julio Jones. So will be interesting. I'm excited to see what Matt can do this year with a very strong run game out there in Indianapolis and a fresh situation. Not that things got stale in Atlanta, but when a new guy comes in, it kind of just reinvigorates people and the having to go out there and kind of prove themselves again. So will be interesting to see how it plays up. But Matt, yeah, good quarterback. You do expect the quarterback situation on the whole to take a slight step back this year, in my opinion. Maybe Mariota / Ritter are better fits for what Arthur Smith wants to do, but on the whole, if we were just ranking these guys, and obviously the Bleacher Report, I'm curious where Ryan ended up, but guessing he was
about 19. He wasn't that far off. 19,
I would guess 15 to 19.
He was ahead of Tua, ahead of Mac Jones, 16 Jalen Hurts, 15 Matt Ryan. So he was middle of the pack.
15. Seems about right for Matt Ryan as well.
And I think he should. We'll see. He's got an opportunity to play well. He's got some good things around him this year. So I will enjoy watching the Colts play this year for sure. Chris Jenkins popped in, so just want to jump in and say good morning. See you on the Broncos side. Yeah, we'll be back tomorrow morning on for Broncos for breakfast at 9:30 Eastern over on Mile High Huddle. Joe has a good question. How do you feel about our safeties going into the season? Joe, not good. Not good. That's one of the places that still scares me. You're hoping Richie Grant makes that step up. That's a hope. That's not a guarantee. Otherwise, you're still looking at Jalen Hawkins is playing okay, but is Jalen Hawkins a above average NFL safety right now, or is he average or maybe a little below average? And then you've got Eric Harris backing up, which is where he should be. Which is kind of hoping where he would have been last year, but Richie Grant didn't take that step that you were hoping he would. And then, on the back end of guys that will, as we talk about roster cuts, I think Tease Tabor is a roster cut. I don't think he will make the roster. Dean Marlowe looked okay as a backup, but when you're talking about the first three going in, Jalen Hawkins, Richie Grant, Eric Harris, I don't feel great about that position. Better pressure up front and better front seven will help. And I really like the corners, especially as Isaiah Oliver gets healthy. You got Casey Hayward, you got AJ Terrell, D. Alford is playing very well.
Yep.
That you've got four pretty good corners in there, and that should help. That should help. But Richie Grant was a high draft pick for a safety, high draft pick for a safety, and seeing Javon Holland go the pick after the Falcons had that they traded away reminds you that Richie Grant hasn't played as well as you'd like him to for where he was drafted. It's time. Taquan Graham, 5th round pick, has stepped up, looks good. I want Richie Grant to make that step to the next level too.
Yeah, and that's going to be hard to evaluate until the season's going with run fits and whatnot, because that's his big question. Also, he was drafted, 24 years old, older for the position. So we'll see this year. It's definitely a position that might be not a bust, but, instead of hitting a double or something there, which you probably want with those kind of picks, it's a single or a base on balls or something like that.
I don't know. I think the next pick after that though was Jalen Mayfield. So you went Kyle Pitts, hit, talking about hits using baseball, baseball reference. You went Kyle Pitts, Richie Grant, and then Jalen Mayfield at the top of the third. Eesh.
Yeah. Spencer Brown, baby. No, you got McGarry. You're going to be fine. But safety is definitely questionable for this roster. You hope that the front seven does well enough funneling the run that you don't have to worry about them as much. They can play more in the pass coverage aspects of the game, and that should lead itself to a better situation for Richie Grant specifically.
Moss comes in, says a healthy Mariota is a top-tier NFL quarterback. Ritter will be a good NFL quarterback, but not top level. So we keep both long-term in a run-dependent system. Yeah, we'll see. We will see if Mariota is not a top-tier NFL quarterback and Ritter you think can be a solid quarterback, but not necessarily a superstar, probably drafting one next year. I'm probably going into the draft and looking to get a quarterback in the draft and try and find that guy. So that's something to look at. Breon comes in. He says, I'm not sold on Richie Grant just yet. I'm not sure he has the athleticism for an NFL starter at safety, honestly. I was all about the Richie Grant pick and the fact that they were able to trade down and get him. I didn't watch Javon Holland as much. I was a senior. I watched the Senior Bowl that year. I went down to practices and watched what they're able to do in basically athleticism one-on-one type of drills where there's not much reading going on. There's not much processing going on. It's what kind of athlete are you? And I was pleased with what I saw with Richie Grant. Thought he was very good in coverage. I liked the way he flipped his hips. I'm like, okay, I like this guy. I honestly think it's the seeing of the game, which is so important in the middle of the field. From inside linebacker to center to quarterback to safety. Those are cerebral positions as much of anything. Yes, you have to have the athleticism, of course, but the reading of the game, and especially, that's where you're hoping in a Dean Pease defense, which is fairly complex. Year 2, he can take that step. But no, there's no reason to be sold on Richie Grant yet. He hadn't shown anything.
Yep. No, yeah, it's got to wait on him. And we said a comment here about he wasn't available. Holland was gone. Holland was gone after the Falcons traded down. But
right, that's right. So Breon, the Falcons had the pick before he was taken. They traded it to Denver and traded down. Denver used the Falcons pick to take Javonte Williams. It was, and then the very next pick was where Javon Holland went. So by the time the Falcons did draft, he was gone. But if they had stayed put and not traded down, which they ended up getting Richie Grant and Drew Dahlman for Javonte Williams. Then Javon Holland at safety could have been the pick there. And we know the Falcons needed a safety. They had to come out of the draft with a safety when they were going into the season with Jerron Harmon and Eric Harris. They were taking a safety. They traded down, and again, they were at the Senior Bowl. They've done a lot of Senior Bowl drafting, which kills me because Spencer Brown killed it at the Senior Bowl, and you guys were there. But offensive tackle, right tackle, future Pro Bowler, Buffalo Bills drafted at like 98.
Yeah.
But Javon Holland was available. He was.
Yep, and also Christian Barmore available as well, who was really good for the Patriots last year. But see how it plays out. Will be interesting. And Richie Grant, don't make it, don't give up on him just yet. And Kevin Mapp come in and saying, what is our strongest group and what is our weakest player group? What do you think, Scott?
Oh, I don't know. This one was tough. Chris comes in and says linebacker. Defensive line is the weakest. A healthy, productive Deion Jones, and I agree with you. But I think right now cornerback. I think cornerback is the strongest when you've got A.J. Terrell, Casey Hayward, D. Alford playing well, and Isaiah Oliver coming off a good season. Hopefully he's playing. Safety isn't good. Defensive line isn't.
Still question marks.
It's
so
better.
Many question marks. Yeah.
Defensive line is better. If I got Grady Jarrett and Taquan Graham playing really well on the edge, I can plug in Anthony Rush at the nose guard. I'm okay with the defensive line. The depth there has some questions.
Yeah.
Cornerback is the strongest. Safety isn't good. If you wrap those in a bundle and call them defensive backs, but I've got, depending on what McGarry does, depending on Matt Hennessy, and depending on Elijah Wilkinson, the offensive line is still arguably the weaker group, and some might say quarterback.
Yeah.
The running back room isn't all that great, honestly.
Yeah.
And then you've got a bunch of, I think PFF ranked the wide receiver room the worst. You've got if I throw Cordero Patterson in there as a wide receiver and Kyle Pitts in as a wide receiver, all right, now my receiving options look pretty good. But I'll say cornerback and safety. And if you don't let me do defensive backs together, I'm going to say offensive line.
Yeah. I think cornerback's a good call. Wide receiver is weird because it's super top heavy. It's not totally proven yet, but Kyle Pitts and Drake London as a 1-2 punch is pretty damn fun. Mm-hmm. But after that, it's
unproven. Drake London's unproven. So, he could be really good. There's excitement there. I know what I got in Kyle Pitts. I know I'm good there. After that, there's a bunch of Jags and a high price rookie. And again, why it wasn't a great trade down draft, but I'm hearing about Christian Watson, I'm hearing about George Pickens, I'm hearing about Sky Moore, I'm hearing about Garrett Wilson, I'm hearing about all these receivers, and by God, Drake London better be a dude, because taking him at 8 when there were so many options moving down the draft was risky.
Yes, it was. Better be a good player. Typically, you do see that though for the early drafted wide receiver, especially as of late. So I'm expecting a good year from him. Question also will be, was he the right wide receiver? Considering Garrett Wilson right behind him.
That's what I mean. There's so many options on
Jameson
there.
Williams. Yeah, we'll see.
Lots of them.
Yeah,
lots of them. And again, you were a huge Sky Moore guy, and I was a big Christian Watson fan. And those guys both went in the second round. And then George Pickens went in the second round. Georgia boy. On that note, this Georgia boy is going to get us out of here. We've got our final preseason game coming up. It'll be interesting to see how much the ones play. And we'll be back on Monday for an instant reaction at 8:45 a.m. for Forging the Falcons. And that will also preview some of the roster cuts that are coming that Tuesday. And then Wednesday, we'll react to the 53-man. So over the course of the next 7 days, there's a lot going on, Nick.
Yeah, it'll be a great time. Didn't even really get into the roster cuts as well. I saw the Falcons website messed it up. They listed Auden Tate being released twice, once as a wide receiver and once as a outside linebacker. So come on, Falcons, what's going on? I know he's a big wide receiver, but come on. It'll be a lot of fun.
Rough day.
Yeah, God, you got fired on your day off? No. Absolutely. It'll be a lot of fun. Football season's gearing up, man. We are coming down. There's starting to be a little bit of crispness in the air, waking up here, although we have another heat wave coming this weekend in Seattle, so can't get through it. But fall is coming, football's coming. It's going to be a good season. A lot more a lot more excitement this year for the Falcons as well, because it doesn't feel like a rudderless boat. Even if they're going to be a worse record-wise this year, maybe, they have direction, and that matters for a franchise.
And again, I'm looking for bright spots, and bright spots I've seen that were some big questions going in were Caleb McGarry, said it a bunch. Taquan Graham, I'm excited to see if Taquan Graham can keep this level up. I mean, you give me a defensive lineman, you start talking trench play and a second-year player that's playing like he's doing in the preseason, yeah, you got my attention. The young guys, Drake London is young too. Kyle Pitts is still 21 years old, for God's sakes. And then reinstate Calvin Ridley and see if you can get anything back for him. I'm interested to get that $11 million of his guaranteed contract back. That's what I'm interested in. And spending that money too. And if they can get a draft pick out of it, even better. So it's going to be, again, it's going to be an interesting year. I'm looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward, we're 2.5 weeks away from kickoff, but I am looking forward to this weekend going against Jacksonville. Not exactly murderer's row the Falcons had in the preseason with the Lions, the Jets, and the Jags. But we've gotten a good look at a lot of players, and I'm glad to see some of the ones play this year instead of last year, where they went out there and then got freaking pimp slapped by the Eagles in the trenches. On that note, why not end on a nice pimp slap? Thanks to everybody for coming in. John coming in late. On YouTube. Thank you. But Breon, Joe, Chris, Kevin, Facebook was extremely active today. Richie and Clee and Saring, Dana on YouTube. Thanks all for coming in. As always, our star supporter, Mark Schrader, coming in with some stars on Facebook. Thank you so much. We just kind of laid out what we've got coming in the next 6 days. So we will see you on Monday on Forging the Falcons 8:45 as we react to the final preseason game and look forward to the roster cuts. And then we'll be back on Wednesday to react to the roster cuts as the Falcons go to their 53. So until then, we will see you next time. Thanks for being here.